Hello and welcome to the presentation on managing your boss. My name is Jordan Davis. If you have the PowerPoint open, let's go ahead and move to the second slide, the article information. The title is Managing Your Boss by John Garbaro and John Kotter, both of whom are professors at Harvard Business School. They're very knowledgeable. This article is actually a staple in most business programs and even in corporate trainings. The thesis of the article is that if you forge ties with your boss based on mutual respect and understanding, you both will be more effective. Let's dive in. Go to slide 3, the introduction. We're going to be covering the need, 2 overarching principles, understanding your boss, understanding yourself, balancing 2 extremes, keys to success, and finally some concluding thoughts. Slide 4, let's look at the need. Is this really important? Well, it sure is. Managing your relationship with your superior is critical for your success and effectiveness. Good managers take time to understand their boss's work habits, their reporting preferences, their work styles. Ignoring the relationship with bosses can be detrimental to the success of the company and to your personal career. This is illustrated for us in the article in the true story of a manager, Bonnevie, who did not manage the relationship with his boss, Gibbons, effectively, which led to hard feelings, major communication failures, the eventual termination of Bonnevie's job, and cost the company over $2 million. The story illustrates the necessity of managing relationships upward within organizations. The case could be made that the boss failed to manage the project and his subordinate effectively, yet as strong an argument could be made that the reverse is true, that Bonnevie failed to understand Gibbons' expectations. So it is very important not only to manage relationships downward, but to manage relationships upward within an organization. Slide number 5. What are 2 guiding principles? Well, number 1, you're going to have a good understanding of the other person and yourself, especially regarding their strengths, weaknesses, work styles, and needs. Understand yourself, understand others. Number 2, you need to use this information to develop and manage a healthy working relationship, one that is compatible with both people's work styles and assets. It's characterized by mutual expectations and meets the most critical needs of the other person. Let's keep this in mind as we move through the presentation. Slide number 6. How do you understand your boss? Well, let's ask some key questions. Question 1. What are your boss's organizational and personal objectives? What are his or her pressures, especially those from his or her own boss and others at the same level? What are your boss's blind spots? What is their preferred style of working? Does your boss like to get information through memos, formal meetings, or phone calls? Does he or she thrive on conflict or try to minimize it? These are questions listed in the article that will help us to understand our boss and how they work. Slide number 7, 3 fatal assumptions. The article lists the example of the VP and the boss. The VP, a successful marketing executive, was brought into a company to straighten out marketing and sales problems. Based on his experience and knowledge, he diagnosed the company needed a greater market share to be more profitable. So he made pricing decisions aimed at increasing volume. Margins declined, profit dropped. The president who hired him stepped in and increased the pricing, but to no effect. At the end of the year, both the VP and the president were fired by the company. What the VP didn't know was that his boss's goal for the company was not just to straighten out the sales of the company, but to increase profitability in the short term and increase it greatly. The VP made 3 fatal assumptions we need to learn from. Assumption 1, taking information supplied at face value. He didn't ask questions to get to the underlying goals and vision of the company. Number 2, making assumptions with no information, so he didn't really find out the facts of what was needed. Number 3, he never actively tried to clarify the boss's objectives. All 3 of these assumptions are dangerous and we need to avoid them in order to have a good relationship with our superiors. Slide number 8. How do we understand yourself? Well, you need to know your own needs, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your personal work style, whether you're more process-oriented or more hard-charging. It's important to know your limitations. You're not going to change either your basic personality structure or that of your boss, but you can become aware of what it is about you that impedes or facilitates working with your boss. And with that awareness, take actions that make the relationship more effective. So you can know yourself. You're not necessarily going to change yourself or your boss, but you can work more effectively with better knowledge. It's important to respond appropriately to the inherent authority of your boss. When we perceive that our bosses may be impeding our goals, we tend to have one of two reactions. If you'll go to slide number 9, two extremes we need to balance. The article spoke about people seeing the boss as an enemy. That through lack of understanding, some managers see bosses as obstacles to overcome or avoid. They try to overcome bosses through force and maladaptive behavior. They tend to meet strength with strength, and they have an unrealistic counter-dependence on their boss. They think, hey, I don't need this guy, and I would be better off without him, or girl. Contrary-wise, the other position is seeing the boss as an all-wise parent. Some workers see bosses as their guardian or mentor and themselves as a Padawan. They tend to comply to everything a boss says or does, even when it's bad, and they have an unrealistic dependence. They expect too much out of their boss, so they see them as a parent or a father figure holding their hand as they walk them through life. And that's not really accurate. Bosses are just human beings. Let's go to slide 10. What are some keys to success? The article spoke about 5 different keys to success to remember in developing and managing a relationship with your boss. Number 1, understanding the differing work styles. And it's important that the worker must adapt to the boss, not the other way around. Mutual expectations. The employee must find out what the boss's expectations are. The flow of information. How much information does the boss want, and how do they want that information delivered? Dependability and honesty. Relationships need trust. If you can't be honest with someone, there's not a lot of trust there. Good use of time and resources. You need to value both of the bosses. They have limited time and limited resources, and every time we utilize those time and resources, it takes away from something else they were doing. Understanding that will go a long way in building a healthy relationship. All right, let's look at the conclusion on slide 11. We have looked at the need. It is important. This is crucial in organizational effectiveness and personally having personal success in your career. 2 overarching principles will be understanding yourself and understanding your boss. How do you do that? Understanding your boss requires asking some key questions about them, how they work, how they like to work, and how they'd like you to work. How do you understand yourself? Well, having good knowledge of yourself, understanding your limitations, and responding to authority appropriately. And then finally, balancing the extremes, counter and over-dependence. You don't want to be too far either way. You need to understand that you need your boss, but you don't want to need him too badly. And the keys to success in developing and managing a good relationship, understanding and remembering those 5 keys will help us to do that. In conclusion, this is a final quote from the article I think summarizes it well. It may not be fun, but managing a relationship with your boss is a worthwhile key to the success of the company and to your effectiveness within the organization.